on our segment now, and just kind of going off of what we were talking about in our first segment when it came to Labor Day, and labor unions and so on and so forth. One of the questions or topics that we've been talking about is class, and there's obviously that I'm going to say and mention the word class, and people are going to just put their shields up, and whether you're this or that, everyone already forms an opinion when it comes to class. And I know this from my time in school, where when you mention the word class, the first thing that comes into people's minds is Karl Marx, the proletariat, so on and so forth. And the minute you talk about class, you're always labeled a communist, which is good, bad, whatever you choose it to be. Now, the reason I bring that up is I want to ask you a very serious question, and I want a very serious answer. Do you think that there ever will be, or there exists the possibility of having a classless society, and is that a good thing?
Well, I mean, like you said, whenever you bring this up, I think people think you're talking about socialism and communism. But if you ask anybody within our capitalist system if getting rid of poverty is a good thing, I think most people say yes. So what you're really saying is you're trying to get one group of people into a different class, where you're going to see, most people pretty much classless. Everybody kind of seems the same, kind of takes you back to like 1950s USA, where everybody was in the suburbs type of idea. I personally don't think so. I think people need to not have something in order for other people to have. That's unfortunate. And it's ironic because I work in the poorest neighborhood, so it's almost like me saying I know that what I'm doing won't have an overall impact on changing the whole community, but you could get a few people in pockets, different groups assimilated into the system, so they could get used to it and kind of ease into the middle class. But me personally, no, I think there's always going to be have and have-nots.
So what's the point of all this then? What's the point of
exactly, having... Right? It's a crazy question, right?
Yeah.
What is the point?
Well, because the argument is always down with capitalism. Capitalism doesn't work. Capitalism sucks. And my argument has always been capitalism is the perfect system because it is functioning in the exact same way that it was designed to function. Removing a few details here, the way that we look at the system today, capitalism, it's perfect. You have a product, you have a consumer.
You also got to ask yourself, what's the purpose of having those economic, ideology in place? And a lot of times it's done by an institution that's trying to sustain itself. So if you look at the American institution, as an empire and stuff like that, in history, it's one of the longest empires, one of the strongest to ever be. To ever create itself and manifest into that. So, like you say, it is working. It's supposed to do that because that's what they're trying to do. And the same thing, the same principles are used and recycled because they're so good and so well-rounded.
Yeah.
Goes into the Constitution and all that stuff. But yeah.
One of the for people out there who like to read, I would suggest, and this was an interesting idea, and it made sense only a few years after I read an essay by Che Guevara called "Socialism and Man," and the idea that he proposed there, amongst others, I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but one of them that did make sense to me was that if you wanted to create a socialist society and a socialist man, you'd have to prepare him for that in order for him to function within that society the way that capitalism has done by creating a capitalist man to function within a capitalist society. Basically, you have to teach people how to function within this system in order for the system to work, and capitalism has managed to do that in a very efficient manner.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And the contrast that I'm going to present to you here, and I remember a few months back I made this comment to a friend, is the fact that for peoples that are coming from the African diaspora, there's a contradiction to capitalism where in a lot of these countries, in the Caribbean with a lot of these indigenous tribes, there was always an emphasis on sharing. and there was always an emphasis on everything being equal within your community, as opposed to the European model, where if I work, I get. The more I work, the more I get. Right? And that conflict of peoples is something that I've always found very interesting, where you have a group of people who, for thousands of years, have always worked in a communal fashion, all of a sudden being imposed a system on them that contradicts fully exactly that.
But even within those communities, those collective communities, I'm sure there's a lot of capitalist principle where you're kind of just working for you, and you're taking advantage of the people underneath you, economically speaking. And I think aspects of all these different ideologies have to intertwine with each other and kind of put into place.
Do you think that a mixed system, the way that a lot of the European nations, some of the European nations have, like the Nordic nations have, do you think those mixed systems are sustainable? I was having a conversation with a friend from Germany who was telling me that he, as a father, gets maternity leave, and for 8 months he gets 8 months maternity leave where he receives 80% of his salary for 8 months.
No, not 8 months.
Yes.
What? 8 months? Damn, the kid is in college already, and then you go back to work.
Yeah, so there's that, and there's in France where once the mother has a child, the government pays for, to a certain degree, I don't know the exact details, but I know that the government pays for a nanny to go to the house and help the newborn baby and the new mother, and this is coming out of tax money.
Well, I mean, it's hard even to compare because you have to compare within their own system. How long? What's the system before that, prior to whatever's in place right now? I mean, I don't know that about France or any of those countries. Rather than can we survive, or knowing where we're at as a capitalist country, can we survive in that country? Do you back to what you said with.
Do you think the United States, the way that it is now, could ever shift into, or that it would be beneficial to shift into a mixed economy?
All right, so it is mixed. Social Security is socialism. Obviously, with the healthcare now, is socialism. The welfare system is socialism. It is mixed, and then you have obviously the corporate Wall Street and all that stuff with extremely capitalism. I think the marketing of this has to be black and white, just like the marketing of politics has to be black and white regarding Democrats and Republicans. The people in power need to put out there that it is one way or the other in order to separate people.
Do you think?
I think when you really get down into it, this stuff is all mixed, and they know it.
Yeah, but the problem that I always see is that we accept one type of socialism and not the other. So we're allowed to bail out the banks, but we're not allowed to bail out Mary Jo.
Exactly. So that's what we gotta have to talk about that.
But why is that? And that part I've never really come to terms with. Why is it that we are so quick to aid these multi-million-dollar banks who don't balance their books and who cheat investors and so on and so forth? And when Mary Jo does the very same thing, and she has to mortgage her house, and we don't let her mortgage her house, and then we call her, a bad homeowner.
Yeah. Well, I compare it to a 4-year-old that just grabs a crayon and start drawing on a wall, right? And then you ask them, why you did that, and they really don't know. It was all impulse, and then they don't know what to do about what they just did. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that they don't know how to do the opposite, or not do what they're doing right now. So they ask them, how do you figure this education problem? They really don't know. How do you actually put more money in education and have it more be efficient? I don't think they really know how to do that.
That's an interesting. That is, I think, to our listeners, I think we're gonna have to dedicate. Obviously, not on this episode, but I think we're gonna have to dedicate an episode to asking and answering that particular question. Is not knowing how to get ourselves out of this cycle, because, like I mentioned before, we've been educated so well in functioning in this particular way that it doesn't seem like there is an alternative, and there has to be.
Exactly, and I think sometimes we think about it like a moral issue. Like, if you think this way because you don't care about what I care about, and it's like I don't think so. I think just people don't know how to behave the opposite of what they're behaving today.
Then that is an interesting point. I would imagine that if that is in fact the case, it gives me hope that things can change, that we can eventually live in a classless society. The only problem, of course, with classless societies is that if I am a welder and I make buildings and I make a lot of money for making buildings, somebody's still gonna have to make my pizza.
Yeah, man, we're a greedy society, man. I don't think it's ever going to be a classless one. I think there's always going to be people that are faster, stronger, either physically or intellectually or whatever, that would want to take advantage of somebody else. I think that's human nature. I think that's, if anything, I think the battle is not doing that. And I think some of the progress has been doing that less and less, taking advantage of the other less and less.
So you're basically saying is, yes, we have our instincts. Yes, this is who we just are naturally, but we don't need to go to the extreme when we do so.
Yeah. I mean, you can see that with violent behavior. We're less violent now because we probably found different ways to control people, or we don't really need to. We don't have that need to survive where we have to kill off a whole tribe in order to, in order to take our piece of cake. I think now we've probably come creative ways to kind of live with one another, or at least somewhat control another without kind of completely killing them off. And I think you can see that with kind of violent behavior with one another.
Yeah, that then now makes me sad to know that I might not be alive to see, a society where we follow our instincts, just not to the nth extreme. And that topic now brings us into our next musical minute, which is a song by just a favorite artist of mine, Sizzler. Been a fan of his for many years, and the song that we're gonna bring you now is Praise Ye Jah. And we'll be back in a few minutes. We're actually in 1 minute. And that was a song by Sizzler, Praise Ye Jah. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Now, to lighten the mood a bit, we're going to bring in our segment called Grind My Gear. Now, there's a few things that do bug me, some more serious than others. And I'm actually going to tell you guys a story. I haven't admitted this story to anyone. And, it's kind of embarrassing. So what grinds my gear is when people fart on your head and don't admit to it. And you're like, yo,
what?
Yes, I know, right?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know. Yo, I know. What? I know, man. Yo, this is only like this. Yo, this stuff happens only to me. Like, I see this stuff all the time. Just bear with me for a second. So anyway, so I'm on the bus, going to work, and the bus is packed. Everybody's standing. There's only standing room. And so right next to the buses here, when you get on a bus, there's the bus driver. And right behind the bus driver is the person who takes the money, right? And so right next to the bus, there was this lady sitting there. She was collecting the money, and I managed to slip in and sit next to her. So it takes me an hour to get to work on a bus. So if you catch a seat, it's a great day. Your day starts off fantastic. So anyway, so I sit next to this lady. She's in a high chair, a few inches above my head, and I'm sitting there reading the newspaper, right? And I'm just like, wow, this is interesting. And I just hear, And I'm just like, I stop, and I'm just like, was that me? Like, yo, what?
You know what? That person that farted probably knew, like, well, some people are gonna get it, and it was like they just went for it, knowing that some people were going to be eye level to that fart.
Yo, you know what was the worst? Yo, you know what was the worst part of that one, Yo, I mean, it's embarrassing. I think my hair smelled funky after that. So the lady was sitting like straight, and then when she released that missile, she lifted up her thigh and kind of like just.
She wrapped up.
Yeah, like she's like yeah. So she revved up, and then she crossed the legs, and it came out, and it made like a little sound. And I'm just like, okay. And then what I realized is that she sent out an exploratory fart to see if it smelled or not, to see if she could fart again. It just so happened that it made a sound, yo, and then this thing smelled, and I'm just like, yo.
So she was trying to leak it out so to see.
Yeah, and that's embarrassing.
She was leaking it out.
And yo,
right.
Yeah,
and see if it's gonna be like a legit odorless one, so she can really drop the bomb.
Yo, and then but it just turned out that her leaky fart was
big.
and then
It was too.
yo, no, and
the build-up was too much.
Oh, it was. I mean, I think she was waiting for this fart for like hours. And anyway, so the worst part about all of this, like, what makes my story even worse, is that after all of this transpired within like 30 seconds of like the Terminator looking at me, I looked at this lady like, are you for real? And she was like, huh. Like it was my fault that she farted on my head. Like, I wasn't supposed to put my head there.
So, I mean, that's something that our commuters can relate to.
Oh my God.
Because I drive in a car to work 2 minutes away. But if you're traveling and bus, train, I guess that's what you're going through.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I'm gonna tell you guys, because I'm in the mood for it. I'm in a storytelling mood. Last week or the week before that, I was going to work. So at nighttime, I do work with a studio in the center of the city, filming videos. So I was coming back from work, and I see an argument in front of me. And there's a man, a woman, and a police officer. And the man is saying, no, $5. And the woman is saying, no, $10. And the woman is like about to hit this man. It's $5, no, $5, $10. And I was just like, yo, what is going on here? So as I get closer, I start to realize what the argument about. It turns out that the dude had contracted this young woman to give him fellatio in a corner. And it turns out that the woman was actually a man. And so she said $10 that she was going to charge her. He said that it was $5. And then in the middle of this whole thing was a police officer negotiating for the both of them. And I literally looked. I was like, yo. I was like, I can die now. I've never seen anything like this in my life. Yo, a police officer standing like, no, what about $5.50? I was like.
So they're trained for that, but they can't subdue a grandmother.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, yo, this is too much. But he was literally like, no, how about $5.75? Okay, $6, and it's over with. And she's like, no, I want my 10. He's like, no, I'm only gonna give her 5. And what's worse about it is the guy was still like, he still wanted it to happen. And the police officers for like 10 minutes like, no, okay, $7 and everybody goes home. I was like,
This is freaking me out. I don't even know.
Yo,
what the fuck?
I know, man. You gotta come down here. I see some.
Why would I go down there? That's going on. Why the fuck?
Yo, I mean, and I'm only giving people today the PG-13 stories. These are just the PG-13 ones. At some point, we'll get into all the crazy stuff. Anyway, Mr. Jojo, is there anything that grinds your gears? Maybe my stories grind your gears. Maybe that's good, huh?
Well, I mean, I guess once you get into it, it makes sense. But initially, I'm like, farting on your head, man. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but it makes sense, man. So say if you're a commuter, I can see that happen. That's funny, though.
Yeah, that's the one.
I'm sure there's only a certain kind of people that actually do that, for our people. And, not everybody does that.
Not everybody does that, man. And I think, that was anyway. That was it. So is there anything that grinds your gears? I mean, you might have just had a fantastic week and nothing grinded your gears, so that might be a wonderful.
Man. What grinds my gear is when dads say that they're babysitting their own kids. Yo, you ain't babysitting, dude. You parenting. That's not a babysitter is somebody you pay or they do it for a favor. Babysitting your kids. That shit pisses me off, man.
Yo, okay, so I'm done. I ain't got it just reminds me of an old Chris Rock stand-up where he said like people want to get rewarded for shit that they're supposed to do. Like you're supposed to take care of your kids. You're supposed to do that. You're not supposed to hit on your wife. That is a good one. I think farting on people's heads is tough, but saying that you're babysitting your kid, oh my god. I can think about it now. Like I'm babysitting my kids today. You haven't seen them in 3 years. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. Their Instagram and shit talking about how is they the babysitter. I'm like, what do you? Come on, man. The dude looks exactly like you. That's your kid.
Like, what do you do for the other 6 days of the week when you ain't got shit?
Yeah, dude.
Like you ain't got.
Anyways, yeah, man. And people say that it's part of the whole the machismo and stuff like that, where fathers aren't really seen as the caregiver. So I can't blame them, man. It's a part of the whole system, but we won't get too deep into that.
You know what? And you're right. We won't get into that. We'll eventually have an episode on this, but I do want to give a shout out. It's not Father's Day, but I do want to give a shout out to all the men out there, and a lot of my friends I'm proud of, who have taken on fatherhood in our generation as something serious. And I know a lot of my friends growing up didn't have fathers, and that could have been a wonderful excuse for themselves not to be fathered. On the contrary, I think all of my friends, the ones that I know who didn't have a father growing up, who today are constantly posting pictures and videos of their children and becoming just not just wonderful men, but wonderful fathers, and then creating, I think, the foundations for change in our community. So that's a real big up to them. Mr. Jojo, one more time, I want to thank you for your participation on Highly Unpolitical. To all of our viewers, our listeners out there, I want to give you guys the opportunity to participate in our Highly Unpolitical. We're going to be sending you out some email requests to some of our friends, families, and just general people that we think have an interesting opinion. So to come and participate on our show, to ask questions, answer questions. So, Mr. Jojo, if you have anybody in mind that you'd like to participate on the show, send them an email. Have them be ready for the conversation. To all of our viewers out there, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, everything. And we will be back next week with another wonderful show. Mr. Jojo, once again, thank you very much, my man. Everything good?
Everything good, man. Have a good night.
Have a good night to all of our viewers out there. We will catch you next week with one more episode of Highly Unpolitical. Peace.